everyone. My name is Ria. I'm a presenter and a host for a living. I've recently worked with First Car, and we have created a VR video, which is used in schools. It actually got given to Leicestershire and Bedfordshire Police first. So they've been using it in their local schools for young drivers. So they're put into situations where it's dangerous and they can decide what to do next. So it's really educating. It's been a great experience to be working with First Car, and I've really enjoyed it and I've learnt a lot. Not only that, but I'm also, of course, a young driver myself. So I fall into the category of what this webinar is for. So I have lots to learn, and I'm so excited to hear from all of the guest speakers so I can pass on and learn some information. So welcome to this event once again. This event is all about the vital role as you as parents continue to play in shaping young drivers' behaviour, confidence and safety on the road. Your support isn't just needed during the learning to drive phase, but long after the L plate come off. Did you know research shows that 1 in 5 newly qualified drivers are involved in a collision within their first year of driving, making this a critical time for support and guidance? That is crazy. 1 in 5 newly qualified drivers are involved in a collision within their first year. I'm sure you as parents can think back to when you first passed your tests, and you can put yourself into your child's shoes and how many dangers there are once you get into the car, especially by yourself. So we've got a fantastic lineup of speakers joining us, each bringing their own insights, expertise and passion for helping young drivers drive safe on the roads. So they'll be sharing how your influence as a parent can make a real difference. So get ready for some practical advice and plenty of tips. I'm excited. I am ready for this. I hope you're just as ready as me. So before I introduce our first guest speaker, we would love to hear from you all. You've already given me a hello, but we are now going to launch a quick poll to find out how much support you've recently given your young driver now that they've passed their test. So we will launch the poll, and it's to find out how much support you're currently giving your young driver now that they've passed their test. So take a moment to select the option that best reflects your experience. So I must say it's all anonymous, and no answer is right or wrong. It's just how you feel. So your input will help shape the conversation today. So is it a lot? I'm still very involved in their driving decisions and habits, or will be once they pass. Some I check in occasionally and offer advice when needed, or plan to once passed. Not much. You've mostly stepped back since they passed, or will once pass, or none. I feel like they're fully independent now, or will be fully independent once passed, or not sure. There's 5 options: a lot, some, not much, none, or sure, not sure. We'll give you a few more moments for you to send through how you feel you're supporting your young person. I can see a lot of your answers coming through. A few saying that I'm not yet passed. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking part in our first poll of the evening. Whether you're still very involved or have taken a step back, it's clear that parental support continues to play a key role in helping young drivers stay safe and confident on the roads. So with that in mind, I would love to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Elizabeth Box, who is a leading transport researcher. So Liz will be sharing some powerful insights into how you can keep making a positive impact. So Liz, are you ready to drop some gems? Our first speaker, no pressure, Liz.
Oh, thank you very much, Ria. Yes, I am ready. So I will just share my screen.
Lovely, thank you so much.
Okay, so now I've got everything open. I can't see the chat or anything. So if there's any issues as part whilst I'm presenting, really just do let me know, and I will try and fix what I can from this end.
No problem, Liz.
Great. So good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining this session this evening. So my name is Dr. Elizabeth Box, and I'm the Research Director at the RAC Foundation. So for those of you who haven't come across the RAC Foundation before, we're an independent transport charity, and we focus on evidence-based work to improve mobility, safety, the economy and environmental issues to do with road use. And I have a particular focus on road safety. So alongside my role at the foundation, I also provide consultancy support through my own organisation, ECM Research Solutions, where I work with a number of private and third sector clients, focusing on the design and evaluation of interventions. And it's all about being rooted in behavioural science and looking at how we can influence behaviour in ways that are practical, effective and evidence-led. So hopefully that's going to inform our discussion this evening. So tonight I'm going to be drawing on that experience and on my research into young driver safety to share some insights and, importantly, hopefully some practical tips that you can as parents put into action. So before I get into today's topic, I thought it might be helpful just to tell you a little bit about who I am, why I'm here today and talking to you about young driver safety. So I've been working in this field for over 20 years now, both as a researcher and as someone commissioning research. Along the way, I've had the chance to focus on many aspects of road safety. A couple of years ago, I completed my PhD in transport psychology after 6 years of researching young driver safety, drawing on international best practice to understand what really works. Since then, I've continued to share that evidence, not just with policymakers and practitioners, but also through the media, talking about the risks young drivers face, what changes we need to the licensing system, and what we can do in the meantime whilst we're waiting for potential change with that. So my aim today is to bring you both the research evidence and the practical actions that you as parents can take to help keep your young drivers safe. I've also recently conducted a review of evidence on how parents can support young drivers, looking at what's happening internationally, and that forms the basis of what I'm going to be talking with you about this evening. So when we think about young drivers, one of the most important things to remember is that that first year after passing the test is the riskiest time. And this is when crash rates are at their highest and when your son or daughter is actually most vulnerable as a result of their age, due to stage brain development in particular, which we'll be talking about in a moment, and also their lack of experience in comparison to much more experienced drivers. It's important to recognise that it's not only very high risk individuals that crash after they have passed their test, and sometimes we think that that is the case. Importantly, your influence as a parent doesn't just start when your child begins formal driving lessons, and it certainly doesn't end when they pass the test. In fact, the research tells us that it begins long before they ever sit behind the driving wheel, in the way you drive, in the way you talk about driving, and the habits that you model every day. But it also doesn't stop there. During the learning phase, you're also a mentor, helping them practice, guiding their decisions and showing them how to think ahead about hazards and risk. And once they've passed, you become a monitor, not in a kind of policing sort of way, but by setting expectations, keeping communication open and continuing to guide them during that high risk first year. So your role shifts, but your influence remains just as important at every stage. So as a parent, you're actually the most important driving instructor your teen will ever have. Even if you don't feel like it, the way you guide and support them and set expectations is just as important as any formal lesson or course. So one of the reasons the first year of driving is so risky isn't just about inexperience, it's also about biology. So research into the adolescent brain shows that while teenagers can plan and think ahead just as well as we as adults can when they're in cool, calm situations, things change when they're in what we call hot emotional situations. So, for example, when driving with friends in a car, the focus can shift towards what we know as immediate social rewards, like impressing peers or avoiding embarrassment. And that's because the part of the brain that helps us manage impulse control, the prefrontal cortex, is still developing right through until the mid-20s. In contrast, the emotional and reward centers of the brain are already very active in adolescence, and that mismatch can mean that even safe, responsible young people are more likely to take risks when emotions are running high. Of course, there's individual difference, but this developmental pattern applies to all teenagers, which is why they are more vulnerable behind the wheel. So if you're interested in this topic, I'd really recommend Professor Sarah Jane Blakemore's book, Inventing Ourselves, The Secret Life of the Teenage Brain, as well as her TED Talk about the mysterious workings of the adolescent brain. They explain brilliantly why teenage brains are wired differently and why your influence as a parent is so crucial during these years. Now let's look at the first in our series of vital roles of parents. So being a model, which is all about what you show your teenagers through your own driving. So research has found it's not just what you do that matters, it's what they think you do that matters. If your teen believes you text whilst driving, even if you don't, they're much more likely to think it's acceptable and to copy it. The flip side is just as powerful. If they believe you're a careful, law-abiding driver, they're far more likely to adopt the same habits as well. And that means the little things matter. So wearing your seatbelt every time, sticking to speed limits, never using your mobile phone whilst driving. Even throwaway comments like, well, everyone speeds a little bit some of the time, can have a more negative influence than you realise it has. The second M that we want to think about is mentor. So when it comes to supervised practice, more really is better. In some countries like Australia, where they have graduated driver licensing, learner drivers must complete at least 120 hours of practice before they can even be allowed to take their tests. We don't have that requirement at the moment here in the UK, but the evidence is clear that the more experience young drivers get in different conditions, the safer they are going to be once they pass their driving test. But it's not just about the quantity of driving, it's also about the quality and diversity of that practice. So practicing at night, in the rain, on motorways, in busy towns, this can help young drivers build the skills they actually need. And just as important is how you guide them. Think of yourself not as a passenger, but as a coach. Instead of saying things like, or directed things like slow down, please, try asking instead, what do you think that pedestrian might do next? So that kind of conversation helps to build hazard perception and decision-making skills. And those are the abilities that keep young drivers safe in the moments that they need it when they're most at risk. So encourage your teenager to do as much hazard perception practice as they can via the online routes that there are. It's a really trainable skill, and what the research shows us is that it can help bring up the awareness of new drivers very closely to close the gap between them and those with 3 or more experience. So it's a really important skill that we would very much like young drivers to develop and learn. Here's a very short video, which I'll cut halfway through due to the time that we have this evening, but it starts to demonstrate really the importance of hazard perception. And this is a VR demonstration that I'm going to show you. Hopefully the sound will work. Ria, do tell me if that's not the case.
So rather than that 2D screen like I had when I did my test, suddenly now you can look all over the place and the red dot is where Sophie's looking, is it?
Yes, the red dot represents her eye movement, so we can see exactly where she's focusing. When her head turns, the scene turns to reflect the direction she's looking, and that red dot shows exactly what she's focusing on right at the moment.
So clever. So she's kind of looking straight ahead at the moment, wants to keep her eyes peeled and just...
Yes, so what we're seeing here is a classic eye movement scanning pattern. She's checking to turn right, and she's completely missed the motorcycle that just cut across her there. She wasn't looking in the right direction at all there. Once she regains her composure, she's pulling into the side street. She'll be checking the parked cars on the left, the oncoming car on the right.
Okay, I'll stop the video there just for the interest of time. But interestingly, that case there showed an issue that we know lots of young drivers struggle with, which is what's called latent hazard, something that you can't immediately see, but more experienced drivers might recognise that sometimes you can have a different vehicle, like a motorcycle, that might appear that you can't automatically see behind a big vehicle. But hopefully that sort of short clip showed you how important hazard perception is, and how building it in a safe environment where we can introduce common hazards that might take longer to see out on the road is actually really helpful for developing that skill.
The wonderful thing about this is because
So it's also important that we help young people develop what's called their if-then plans. They are unfortunately likely to find themselves in certain scenarios and situations that if they can plan what they will do in a cool, neutral environment, like we discussed earlier, they're much more likely to remember their safe driving plans in the moment. So here's a few different safe driving plans on the screen, just to give you some ideas about what you can talk to your teens about. For example, let's take that one there about if I'm tempted to use my mobile phone whilst driving to stay connected with friends and family, then I can pull over at a safe location and check my phone. So it's all about thinking, what are the things we're going to find difficult, and actually what are the plans that we can put in place. If you'd like to have a further look at the example plans to work through, you can use the QR codes on the screen, which link through to this document and also provide you the full set of Drive Fit videos, which is an intervention that I've been involved in designing, which has been run in schools and fully evaluated. The one I've just shown you on hazard perception, or the section of, is also there as well, but that hopefully will be a useful resource to see how you can discuss some of these issues. It's very natural for parents to feel that once their son or daughter has passed their driving test, that, you know, the job is done. After all, they've worked hard, they've met the government standard, and they've been told they're safe to drive independently. But as we've been discussing, the reality is that period just after the test is when young drivers are most at risk. And crash risk actually peaks in those first 6 months. And that's because of two things. They're still young, with impulse control and decision making developing, and they're still inexperienced, with limited practice in anticipating those hazards we've just been talking about. So that's why in many countries with graduated driver licensing, there are restrictions for the first 6 to 12 months after passing. One of the most common is to ban carrying peer-age passengers, and the evidence for this is really strong, with one study finding that having 3 or more passengers under the age of 21 in a car increases the crash risk fourfold compared to driving alone. So maybe in those very early months, just taking one passenger during the day or not taking any passengers whilst getting that experience is found to be very protective. We obviously don't have those rules here in the UK, but many families are choosing to put their own boundaries in place. In the US, for example, parent-teen agreements are common. You can see that on the screen. And they set out things like clear expectations around seatbelts, mobile phone use, driving at night, carrying passengers. If you wanted to explore it more, you can have a look at that link on the screen, which shows the US example. And I would really hope that soon we'll have some more resources like this in the UK situation for families to use. Another factor to consider is access to a car. So research shows that young people who drive a family car, rather than having their own vehicle straight away, are at lower risk. And perhaps most importantly, staying engaged makes a huge difference. Keeping the conversation going, checking in and offering support can significantly reduce risk and help your team build those safer habits as they're moving into that independent driving. So if there's one thing I'd like you to take away today, it's this. As a parent, you are far more powerful than you might realise. You're not just sitting in the passenger seat, you're the co-pilot, the mentor, the role model your young driver will look to, whether you know it or not. And your influence doesn't just stop when they pass their test, it lasts far beyond the first lesson, the first drive, and even far into their first year. So the way you drive, the way you teach, and the way you talk about driving has an influence on your child's safety for very many years to come. So yes, driving instructors teach the rules of the road, but actually it's you who shapes the habits, the attitudes, and the values that help keep them safe. So I think as parents, it's easy and natural to think our own young people won't be as vulnerable as others, that they're sensible, that they know what they're doing and they'll be fine. But what the research shows us is that all young drivers are susceptible to risks, not just the obvious risk takers. And this is because of their age and also their stage of brain development and their limited driving experience. And while some young people are more cautious, every teenager is exposed to the same vulnerabilities when they're behind the wheel. So the good news is that there are practical things you can do that can make a real difference, even if you're feeling a little bit like this cartoon in the first instance. So start those conversations early, show them what safe driving looks like, and talk through how to cope with situations. Aim for as much supervised practice as possible, ideally over 100 hours, and make sure it's varied at night, in the rain, on motorways, in busy town centres. Use that time to build hazard perception and decision-making skills, and not just car control skills. Young people can be very, very good at car control. It's the other things around decision-making and hazard perception that can take longer to develop. And once they pass the test, keep supporting them with sensible boundaries, like limits on peer passengers, agreements about nighttime driving, and where possible, encouraging the use of a family car, which can be protective. And the crucial point is, you as parents are the centre of this. Your guidance, your support, and your influence are key to keeping young drivers safe, as well as everybody else on the road safe as well. So thank you for listening. I hope you found this talk informative. If you'd like any further information about what I've spoken about in this talk this evening, please do take a look at the links on the screen. I'm not sure if we have time for questions now. I think questions might be coming later, but you can always get in touch with me using the contact details on the screen if you have any questions at all. So thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much, Liz. We do actually have time for one question, if that's okay, Liz. So we had one of our attendees. So we've had quite a lot of questions in the chat. You'll come to see once you read the chat. But just one question we have had from our attendees is, what can parents do to help young drivers handle peer pressure?
Yes, that's a really important question, and something I think all parents are concerned about, because we know as young people move into adolescence, their peers become their world, and that's a very developmentally appropriate thing to do. I think some of it comes down to developing those coping mechanisms and strategies that I spoke about, having those if-then plans, thinking about what are those scenarios that you might find yourself in, and how can you save face, because often that's what young people want to be able to do. You know, social death is a real concern for young people, and they want to save face. So thinking through those options, being the parent that says, look, I will come and pick you up at any point if you need me to come, and having those discussions and making that a safe place to discuss those options. I think that is one way in which we can help equip young people to have those coping mechanisms that they can draw on in those really tough situations that we know that they're probably likely to find themselves in at some point.
That's great. That's really informative. It's actually been really interesting to see from your perspective how you view the topic. So thanks again, Liz. I really, really appreciate. We've got lots of thumbs up coming up from the chat, so I think everyone feels the same, Liz. So thank you once again.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I introduce our next speaker, it is time for another quick poll. We love our polls. So we've already done one at the start of the evening. We now have our second poll. So just as before, please choose the option that you feel reflects your knowledge best. So the question is, how familiar are you with the concept of graduated driving licenses and how they aim to support young drivers? Are you very familiar? I understand how GDL works and its benefits. You're somewhat familiar. You've heard of it, but you don't know the details. You're not familiar. This is something completely new to you. Or number 4, you're not sure. You're unsure what GDL even refers to. So the poll will come up in the chat. You can click whether you are familiar, somewhat familiar, not familiar, or not sure. This is a great way for us to see where everyone's at. So once you're ready, pop your answer into the chat as we have our next guest speaker. You can see a lot of you. I think it's great how many of you have joined us this evening. It's so positive to see so many parents and guardians wanting to help their young person with their driving. Okay, so once again, you can continue to think and click in with the poll, but we are now going to introduce you to our second speaker. She'll be sharing her thoughts on this very topic. So Sharon has worked absolutely tirelessly to raise awareness of the dangers posed to young novice drivers upon passing their driving test, especially on rural roads. So Sharon, are you ready? Your time is here.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. So hello everyone, and my name is Sharon Huddleston, and I am the mother of Caitlin Huddleston, whose photo is now on the screen. And I'd like to thank Kate and Faye for giving me this opportunity to discuss with you my strong concerns about the safety of young novice drivers and their peer age passengers and other road users that are affected and devastated through young driver crashes. I'd like to start by explaining a little bit of background on why I am speaking this evening. And I am going to be reading from notes, as I don't want to miss anything out, any information that I want to share in the time that I've been given. So forgive me for reading from notes. So my daughter Caitlin, on the July the 14th in 2017, my youngest child Caitlin was tragically killed at the age of 18 as a passenger in a female friend's car. Her friend was 18 and had passed her test just 4 months previously. The crash happened while the girls were travelling on a wet rural road in Cumbria, and while they were travelling on their way for an evening meal. There were 3 of them in the car, all 18 and all female. And tragically, 15 minutes into the journey, the young, newly qualified driver lost control on a bend in the road. Now, she wasn't speeding, but through her inexperience, she entered the bend too fast for her experience of driving. And with this, she lost control of the car and spun onto the opposite carriageway. Tragically, the car spun into the pathway of a van driven by a 52-year-old man, and a horrific crash happened. My daughter, Caitlin, took the full impact and was killed, as was the driver. The backseat passenger survived and spent 4 months in hospital recovering, and the van driver has lifelong injuries. Now, there were no breaking of any laws. The crash was down to inexperience of the novice teenage driver, and the coroner ruled this at the inquest. And from this one crash alone, 4 families' lives were devastated and changed forever. Now, I don't want to frighten anyone here in this webinar because I am a bereaved mother through a young driver crash. But what I want from this evening is to make you all aware of everything that I was sadly unaware of that evening. And my hope is that you will take from this webinar some important information that I wish someone had told me about before Caitlin got into that car that evening. And if we had known a lot of what I do now know, that crash wouldn't have killed my daughter and her friend, as we as parents wouldn't have let that journey take place. I now know that my daughter's death was preventable, and I was made aware of this, backed by the road safety charity Break shortly after Caitlin's death. And my goal now is to highlight the need to urgently improve the driving licensing system for young drivers, as I feel we in the UK have an outdated licensing system compared to other countries. So since Caitlin's death, I've been researching proven safety precautions for young novice drivers and their peer age passengers, and I set up Caitlin's campaign on what should have been Caitlin's 20th birthday in 2018. But can I please also say that please don't think, well, this will never happen to me or to my child, because I'm here as proof that it can happen to anybody. And Caitlin herself didn't drive, but is a victim of a young driver crash. People unfortunately presume, well, they must have been doing something wrong, when in fact, in most cases, this isn't the case, it's inexperience. So the first thing that I had never heard of before Caitlin was killed is a law called graduated driving licensing. And many people that I speak to have never heard about this law either until I tell them about it and why I campaign for it. So graduated driving licensing, or GDL for short, is a form of a phased licensing system that introduces various requirements of new drivers to support them through their early driving career when they are at their greatest risk of injury and in injuring others. It encourages a more varied practice for during the learning phase, and then targets a known risk situations, such as carrying peer-age passengers. And it imposes safeguards, we like to call them, for a short period after they have passed the test. So this law is in many other countries and has reduced collisions and trauma from collisions involving young drivers by up to 20 to 40%. And we know through research, the most effective element of a GDL system is the passenger safety precaution, and will have the biggest impact on saving lives. Now, how I like to think of a phased licensing system is that it's similar to an apprenticeship in a workplace. So putting these safeguards in place for young people in our workplaces, why don't we put safeguards in place for novice learner drivers when a car is a very dangerous piece of machinery? So what we should do is train them and then have a training period before more responsibilities are given to them. As other people's lives are literally in their hands and cars can kill in seconds. We know that immediately after young people pass the driving test, they are at the point of the greatest risk. And a fact I want to raise awareness of is that with every extra same age passenger and a young newly qualified driver carries, the crash risk heightens by up to 45 times. So if you add one peer-age passenger, you double the risk, and add two peer-age passengers, you triple the risk. I never knew this, and I found out too late, my daughter. To reduce this, what we are calling for and recommending is that teenage novice drivers don't carry peer-age passengers or their friends as passengers for at least 6 months after passing the driving test to gain experience driving solo or with an older experienced driver first. And just to quote Dr. Sarah Jones from Public Health Wales, who has researched GDL and novice drivers for many years, she states that the most dangerous thing a teenager can do is be a passenger in another teenage driver's car. And in the year that Caitlin was killed, there was 58 young passengers killed in a young driver's car. And to put that into perspective, that is like 2 secondary school classes of teenagers that could be saved annually if this element was put into law. Fact I was also unaware of was that one of the leading causes of death in our younger generation of 17 to 24-year-olds in the UK is road traffic collisions after suicide. Road traffic collisions are a bigger threat to young people than drugs, gun and knife crime. And young drivers make up 7% of all licence holders, but are involved in a fifth of all killed and seriously injured. And worldwide, road traffic collisions are the leading cause of death to young people aged 5 to 29-year-old. But I want to stress too is that over 70% of deaths due to young driver crashes aren't the young driver, but actually the young passengers in the car and other road users, for example, like pedestrians or cyclists or other road users. Something else that I was totally unaware of was the brain development in adolescent children. Youngsters are obviously still maturing, and the rational part of the teenager's brain isn't fully developed until around age 25. And this can't be altered by training or education. And it's not their fault, it's how their brain develops. It's nature, it's science. But due to this, young drivers show poorer attention and are less able to judge appropriate speed for circumstances such as wet road surfaces and bad weather conditions, entering a bend in the road and stopping distances. The combination of youth and inexperience puts young drivers at a higher risk of crashing. So my third slide is the Caitlin's message, rural roads information. Could I have my third slide on, please? Thank you. So this is Caitlin's message, and it's about rural road dangers to young drivers. And this is another thing that I was unaware of as a parent in 2017. I was unaware of the dangers rural roads posed to young drivers. And this is something, as I say, I was unaware of that evening when Caitlin was killed on a local rural road in Cumbria. I didn't know that rural roads had the highest number of collisions involving young novice drivers on them. I was under the common misperception that motorways were more of a danger and risk to lives on roads. And in fact, many people underestimate the dangers rural roads pose. So I came up with an idea of an information page full of advice for parents of young drivers. And with the full support of Ed and King from the AA Charitable Trust, we together produced the Caitlin's message information pages. Now, on the first page is an imagined letter from Caitlin saying to take care and saying you know, her future was taken from her. Please don't let your future be taken from you. The second page is a list of important facts called Caitlin's tips on how to stay safe on rural roads and advice on not carrying your friends as passengers until you feel more confident to do so. And there is a QR code shared on the screen to read more on this information. And these pages were published in the first car magazine called Learning to Drive, the Parents Guide. And for any more information on everything that I have spoken about, you can now find online our new website called Protect Young Drivers, which I think the link will be shared probably in the webinar this evening. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope I have helped in some small way with your teenagers learning to drive and after passing the test. And the thing is that if the government aren't going to implement these safeguards that I've been talking about this evening, we as parents must do it ourselves to protect our children, because our children are, of course, the most precious gifts that have been given to us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sharon. I just want to say, and I think a lot of people are saying in the chat that they're really sorry for your loss, and we're just so grateful that you shared the story of Caitlin. And I hope we use this story to actually propel the younger generation and to learn from it. So once again, thank you, and sorry for your loss. I think that certainly changed the tone, but we needed to hear the truth and the reality of what dangerous driving, well, not even dangerous driving, but driving, young drivers sometimes don't know what to do because of their inexperience, as you were saying. We have had a lot of questions once again, but we have chosen one. And it asks, if you don't mind answering, Sharon, how do parents navigate who their young person takes in the car and what time of day they are allowed to do this?
So my advice would be for parents to please remember that crashes involving young drivers occur more when they are socialising, actually, and especially over the weekend days. Caitlin's crash that she was killed in was on a Friday evening. We know that crashes more commonly occur during the early hours of the morning and late at night for young drivers. So they're as well the times where we should be aware of. But I would definitely talk to your teenage children about why you won't want them to carry passengers after hearing our webinar this evening, hopefully. As even a conversation in the car with friends in the car can distract a driver, even a simple conversation can. And explain that, the first 6 months of not carrying your friends is a small sacrifice to make, really. And maybe after 6 months, then slowly introduce carrying a passenger as well, and just please remember Caitlin's case and Caitlin's story, and put that across to your teenagers, that you don't have to be doing anything wrong for a crash to occur. So hopefully that advice is all right for that question.
Great advice. Thank you, Sharon. I definitely resonate with that. I don't think we, as young people, understand the responsibility of actually getting into a car. So this has really changed my perspective. And I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same. So thank you once again, Sharon. I'm really grateful that you shared the story of yourself and Caitlin's message.
Yeah, thank you.
So moving on, we have our final presentation. So I would like to introduce Kate Monk. Now, Kate Monk is a driving instructor with over a decade of experience. That's a lot of experience, Kate. She will share what she's learned from working closely with learner drivers and their families.
I just set up my screen. Bear with me for 2 moments. That one.
We can see the screen, Kate.
There we go. We should hopefully be on now.
Yes.
So you have heard all about the risks so far, and what are you actually going to do to protect your new driver? So I am a driving instructor. I've been working with young people and families now for around 10 years. I have my endorsed license, which means I work with the post-collision and the post-offence retraining. I also train driving instructors, and more recently have my online course for parents and new drivers. Most importantly to me, though, I'm a mum, and I've got 2 children who make sure my days are never boring, keep me on my toes. But we spend our whole lives protecting our children. We put helmets on, we wrap them up in shin pads, arm pads, car seats, and then at 17, we put them into a metal box that has every potential to kill them themselves, their friends, other people. And are we really sure that they know what they're doing when we do that? As Liz has said, the first 12 months post-test are the most dangerous, and it's really important that you talk about those risks together and explore solutions that will work for you. And we need you as parents to be the positive driving role model so that it starts well before they get in the car at 17. We need you to get involved in the learning process, and that doesn't just mean as the learner driver, this means beyond test as well. So practice with them in different weather conditions, different traffic types, different road times, all types of times of day and night with your support next to them so that they've got that guidance they need. Talk through what you're doing when you're driving so that on every drive you can help develop those hazard prediction skills and the anticipation that they need. Help them recognize what fatigue feels like and how to manage that, and how and when to take a break. And it's up to you as well to help them build stamina, build focus, and develop that respect for rules that they need. And the key skills such as navigating, which we take for granted, but those kind of distractions are the main reasons that that young drivers face trouble. You can ask your driving instructor to introduce motorways. We did mention in the chat there that fully qualified instructors can take learners on the motorway in a dual controlled car. If that's not an option, or if you live a long way from a motorway, once your learner has passed their test, supervise them. Make sure you've brushed up on your own motorway theory first, though, to give them the best advice. So graduated driving licence would be ideal, but we're not going to be getting one anytime soon. But that doesn't stop you as a family from making your own. So what elements of a graduated driving licence would work for your family? It will be different for everybody, and there's no right and wrong answer, but write down your commitments to each other. You can stick them on the fridge with a magnet, but keep them visible so that you are all on the same page and you know what to expect from each other. And it's not just about the learner driver or the new driver and their commitments. It's about you as the supervising drivers, as the parents, as the families, the friends, the extended friends and family to really make that commitment to change your driving as well, so that we're all representing a much better model to our learners and our new drivers. I've developed a step-by-step guide, the My Learner Driver, if you need help with making those. Being a better passenger, obviously not being a passenger would be the ideal, but there are going to be moments where they're going to have to be passengers. So encourage them to avoid distracting the driver. Hold on, bear with me a second, I've lost my screen. Da-da-da.
You were just in the flow of everything.
I was, it's so annoying. It's the joy of living in Devon in the middle of nowhere, I'm afraid. So learn to be a better passenger. So not avoiding the driver, distracting the driver, sorry. Learn to navigate properly and give those directions properly. And change conversations that young drivers are having in the car away from showing off, looking at skills and advice on cornering, feedback, G-force, reading the road ahead, looking at road signs. And My Car, My Rules, which is written by The Honest Truth and sets out 5 rules that a driver will put that everyone must obey. Then again, they'll be different for everyone, and I'll put a link in the chat in a moment to for everyone to have a look at that on The Honest Truth. Do you know who your young person is getting in the car with? Write a list of all the drivers that your friends might, your young person might trust, the friends that they would go out with, and make a very clear list of those that they would not trust and make sure they never get in the car with those people. Have a backup plan for getting around, so have some cash in a back pocket or a card, or have that discussion with them so that your young person knows they can call you at the most inconvenient times of night if it means that they aren't getting into dangerous situations. As parents, we will come. We know we will come. We might moan about it, but we will be there. Explore how your new driver can get out of dangerous situations with their friends. Let's say that you've got a young lady in the car with a boy who's driving too fast, and I always say feign travel sickness because nobody wants vomit in the car, but just find techniques that work for you, again, to get out of those difficult situations. And the agreements with the friends not to carry passengers for a set period of time after passing, and have those discussions with the friends' families as well, so that everyone's on the same page. Think about curfews and knowing where they're going, and have that as part of your sort of family commitment to each other. My Learner Driver is a completely new approach to the learning process, very much aimed at the parents and their new drivers. You'll be looking to improve your skills as well as your learner skills. Take responsibility for the post-test driving, and it is absolutely not just for learners, it's for late teenagers and for new drivers as well. And I've tried to make it as bite-sized, step-by-step as possible so that it doesn't take up too much time. You can do it on your everyday drives. And we've just put it on a free trial so you guys can all take a look before you sign up. But yeah, if you want to scan the QR code, and it'll be there later. And I shall pass you back to Ria because I only get 5 minutes. Thanks, Ria.
Oh, thank you, Kate. It was so quick. I was getting into it. I was like, yeah, tell me more. But you're not going anywhere, as we need you for our rapid round table. I feel like you've touched a lot upon a lot of things. So I'm sure your insight will be needed in the next set of questions. So not only do we have Kate, we also have Owen. I can see Owen. So Owen is a sergeant. So I should say Sergeant Owen, shouldn't I? Sorry, Sergeant Owen. He is from Devon and Cornwall Police Roads Policing Unit, and he brings frontline experience of the challenges young drivers face on the roads. So together, both Kate and Owen will tackle key questions and share practical advice. So Owen, are you there? Can you hear me?
I am, and I can hear you. Yes.
Good. This is going well. Well, our first question at our roundtable is, are there specific consequences for young drivers if they are caught by the police? And how could parents use these consequences when they are speaking to their young person?
Yeah, so your young driver for the first 2 years can only get up to 6 points. If they get up to 6 points, then their license gets revoked and they have to start all over again, and start the whole process again, which is quite a heavy penalty, really, when you consider everything that they put into learning to drive, and the financial cost of it as well, which often falls on the parents. So yeah, one mobile phone offence, for instance, is 6 points, and that will that will take them back to square one. Speeding, 3 points. Most offences come with 3 points, but it could be something that's not related to their driving. It could be something that's related to the vehicle, say a bald tyre. So it's things like that that we use, on the George's Car Media side. So I come with kind of two hats here, one being the roads policing side and the other being the George's Car Media, which is directly targeted towards young drivers and tries to give them that education and information that stops them getting those points, and keeps them safer on the road.
Nice, very informative. I feel like you've answered that. We've got our next question for Kate. So, how should a parent go about speaking to their young person about the dangers of drink and drugs, especially around driving?
They just need to have those honest conversations from the off, really. What are the consequences going to be for that new driver if they were caught? Not just being caught. I mean, that's the ideal situation if they do get caught. If they don't get caught, what's going to happen to their friends? Let's say there isn't a crash and they get away with it. What are their friends going to think of them? Are they going to trust in their driving? You really need to look at the impact that them having either a crash or not having a crash, go with what other people are thinking about them, and that will help mold that sort of socially acceptable. Yeah, Owen, I can see Owen with his hand up there. So do you want to go ahead, Owen? Because you'll know loads more about this than me as well.
Yeah.
Gems with us.
There's a lot of misconceptions, around the drink and drug driving, and it's a lot more complicated than people will often think. People will generally think about the prescribed limit, which is your 35 micrograms of alcohol and 100 milliliters of breath. But what does that mean to anybody? Nobody really knows what 35 micrograms is. So, we often get, well, how much can I drink? Can I drink 1 pint? Can I drink 2 pints? And a lot of people will think they can go and have one or two drinks, and they'll be all right because they'll be under the prescribed limit. But what they don't realise is that Section 4 of the Road Traffic Act doesn't deal with a prescribed limit, it deals with impairment. So if they were to have a crash, or even if somebody crashes into them and it's not necessarily their fault, when we come along as the police, we will do those roadside tests. And if we can prove that they're impaired, which by the very nature of the fact that they've had that collision would suggest that there's possible impairment there, any amount of alcohol in their system or any amount of drug in their system, then that carries the same penalties as if they were over the prescribed limit. And if we're looking at the drug side of it, the drug swipes that we use at the side of the road, that tests for cannabis and cocaine by the side of the road. But then if they fail that, then we take bloods and we can look for any drug that's in the system. So that may not necessarily be an illegal drug. It could be something, that is a prescribed drug like tramadol or something like that. If that has potentially caused the impairment, then once again, you're back to that offence, and they will lose their license and everything that comes with it, including the stuff later down the line, because there are big implications of being caught drink or drug driving.
Do you know if there are any resources to support this?
In what way? What kind of resources? The information?
Yeah.
So a lot of that information we put out regularly on George's Car Media, both on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, because it's a common question that we get all the time, and people find it quite difficult to understand. And it is quite difficult legislation to understand. So yeah, we do it quite often in a format that is quite simple for people to understand, and yeah, it's all available there on the videos.
Right, nice. Thanks for that. So, Owen, we need you again. The next question is for you. So, based on your experience, what do you think are the top 3 safeguarding measures that parents could suggest as part of an informal graduated driver licensing approach to help reduce collisions involving young drivers?
I think I'm going to back up a lot of what's already been said. In my experience, and when people were talking, I was thinking back to all the collisions that I've dealt with, all the ones that come through to me, because I see every serious collision form from anywhere in Devon and Cornwall, so I see it all. And I can't actually think of one where it was just a single occupant of the car when it's a young driver that's involved. I can't think of one off the top of my head. There's always multiple occupants in that car. So if it was me thinking back to my kids have grown up now, and talking about what other people were saying about being that role model. My children had the benefit of me doing what I do for a living and seeing me drive the way I drive for as long as they can remember. And funnily enough, the boy is a much better driver than the 2 girls are. And he's just done his advanced stuff in the police as well now. So yeah, that was kind of a strange one, because I thought the girls would be probably better, but they weren't. But there we are. But yeah, it's that who have they got in the car, and trying to reduce that number of people in the car for me is a critical one. If you can have a contract with them that says they won't have anyone in the car, so much the better. But if you don't think that's realistic, then at least reduce it to as few as possible in the car, preferably just the one. Because it's not just the peer pressure of them doing things that they're not comfortable with. Just having that one person in the car can provide a distraction to them just by talking to them, just by turning the music up. Anything like that is not what they had when they were learning to drive, and it just creates that distraction for them. So for me, that's the critical one. Putting the phone away, definitely putting the phone away without a shadow of a doubt. Get rid of that phone. For the youngsters, it's not like it was when I grew up. We didn't really have mobile phones, and when they did come along, they were the size of a brick. And you didn't have like WhatsApp, and you didn't have social media. Now they have, and it's very difficult for them to put that phone away because they've grown up with it, and it's part of their life and an extension of their arm. But it's really important that that phone is put away so that it doesn't cause that distraction, because that again is one of the main things that we see. And the third one for me would be trying to know where they are at all times, and trying to have that relationship with them that's an open relationship, so that they can tell you where they're going, where they are, and what time they're going to come back. And if they are going to be late for whatever reason, to let you know. So you've got that kind of element of knowing where they are without putting it as a restriction on them as well, if that makes sense, because the more they feel that they're restricted, probably the less they're going to comply with it. So it's just about having that open relationship with them, so that they feel comfortable telling you where they are, and having that curfew, because like we've already said, the vast majority of these things happen at night. And it happens at night, and it happens with multiple occupants of the car.
That's great. Thanks, Owen. Someone in the chat, Sue, said that she has Live 360, so she can track where her daughter is while driving. I think that's a great resource to use as well. So thank you for your top 3. Our next question at our roundtable is for you, Kate. Have you got any advice to encourage your learner to continue learning the highway code and understanding its meaning after they passed the theory test?
I mean, absolutely, yeah. The only way that people are going to get better at driving is to keep developing. We've got to change how we think about the test. It's not the end goal. It's not a final destination for all of our learning process. It is simply saying you were good enough on the day to pass in the conditions you were in. So that learning needs to carry on with advanced driving, with continuing with the theory, putting everything into practice long after the test, with extra support as well. It's just a transition into the next phase.
Lovely. Thanks, Kate. Short but sweet.
Yeah.
It works always. Owen, last question, and then I won't bother you. What are your top 3 pieces of advice for a new driver?
Oh, wow. That one I wasn't expecting, so I'm thinking on my feet here. Um, the top thing would be to continue driving the way you were taught to drive. In my view, although you're going to get more experience, it's about keeping up the skills that you have and not letting those bad habits creep in, because it's really, really easy to let those bad habits creep in. So it's about encouraging your young driver to continue driving, because we all see it the minute they pass their test, automatically they consider themselves to be the best driver in the world. And the seat goes back like this, and we're stretching out on the steering wheel, and we're like this.
You think it's
Yeah.
cool to drive like that? You probably disagree.
Sorry, say that again.
I think we think it's cool to drive like that. I think you
Absolutely.
disagree.
Yeah, they think it's cool to drive like that, but it's not, and that's why they weren't taught to drive like that in the first place. So yeah, I think it's really critical for them to keep up those skills and to look to get further tuition. So moving on to something like the Pass Plus, they're not going to be able to go straight to an advanced one, because they're going to need a little bit of experience before they can move on that far. But again, it's like we've said about having the passengers in the car. For the young driver, it's please don't take your friends in the car, because they are going to cause that distraction. They are going to give you that little bit of peer pressure that you could do without at this stage of your driving career, and that's where the bad habits start to creep in, and things like that. And the third one, I think it's probably about keeping up, that knowledge, and keeping within the confines of the highway code. So, do the stuff that you should be doing and do it properly, and stick to those rules. Because the reason we have collisions is because people don't stick to the rules. If everybody stuck to the rules, we wouldn't see the collisions that we have. And in the UK, between 4 and 5 people in average are killed on the road every day. Every day, 4 or 5 people don't make it home for tea. But if everybody stuck to the rules, generally that wouldn't happen. It's very rare that we get a genuine accident.
That's really powerful. Well, thank you, Owen. I think I'll definitely use those 3 pieces of advice. We are now moving on to our Q&A. So, Owen, Kate, thank you so much for our roundtable. Our Q&A, we're going to open it up to all of our other speakers too. So this does bring us to the end of our main presentation, but once again, we now have our Q&A session. So if you have any questions, now is the time to pop it into the chat if they haven't been answered already, so we can ask our guest speakers. So should we have some questions? I can see a few questions here, so I'm just going to choose one. Liz, do you mind answering this one? So it says, what are the advantages/disadvantages of using P plates? She says her son is reluctant as he thinks it invites bad behavior in other drivers, whereas she thinks it makes people more tolerant.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. If we look at other countries, normally they have some sort of P plates because it relates to licensing restrictions. So as we've talked about graduated driver licensing, it would indicate somebody's in their learner period or a progressive period, if you like. But when we're not in those sort of scenarios, I haven't seen any evidence to show that it helps with safety. I think it's very much a personal decision. If somebody feels like it would help them because it would help other drivers feel much more aware of their newly status, then that's great. If somebody doesn't think it's going to help, it doesn't seem to be absolutely necessary. We haven't got any evidence that suggests that it's helpful for safety, if you see what I mean.
What would your advice be? Would you say that young drivers need to put P plates on, or?
Well, as I say, I think it's a personal preference. There isn't, as I said, there isn't good evidence to say. If there was evidence saying yes, putting a P plate on your car makes you a lot safer, makes others much more aware of your learner status or your newly qualified status, and therefore people change as a result. But I think, as the questioner said, sometimes the public aren't always helpful. And we certainly know that young people, when they immediately pass their test, do find it very difficult, that sometimes they feel they have to keep up with the speed of the traffic, even if they want to keep at the speed limit. So sometimes the rest of the public aren't very helpful to supporting safety. So again, I couldn't say based on the evidence that it's definitely something you should do. It's a personal preference.
That's a great answer. Thank you so much, Liz. I do notice a few people have to leave, which is fine, but thank you so much for joining. We would really appreciate if you could take a moment to fill out our short feedback survey, and the link should be in the chat now. But if you're still with us, that's great. Keep sipping a cup of tea. We have a few more questions that we can go through before our guest speakers have to leave. Kate, this question is for you, and it says, what is the best source to establish your nearest qualified instructor? The DVLA register is out of date, and there are so many websites acting as intermediaries. Gosh, that's the word I'm struggling with.
I know what you mean.
Okay. And it is okay if you're getting the best possible training and education.
So I don't know whether you guys have ever heard of the Honest Truth. It's for a driving instructor to sign up to make sure that your new drivers, your learners, are getting 10 truths all around vital road safety messaging. Instructors who have signed up to the Honest Truth, they really care. They care about you, they care about your children, they care about road safety. And they have a very handy map on their website where we're all pinned out across the country. So that would always be my first point of call. Pop onto the map and find your nearest Honest Truth instructor. If your instructor is not registered with the Honest Truth, ask them why, because it is free in many places. It's funded through the Vision Zero, and in other places it's not very many pounds a month at all. So why aren't they using it? What do they need to be persuaded to do to care a little bit more about your child's safety? I'll pop the link. Oh, I think Kate's already beaten me to it, but there we go. I did a link there as well, straight to the app for the map.
Lovely, that's great. So they can just follow the link to find out the Honest Truth. That's great. So I think we have one final question that we'll ask. So is the Advanced Institute of Motoring course worth sending new drivers on? If anyone wants to answer that, Liz, Owen.
Yeah, I'll have a go. I'm sure others will come in. I'd seen a variation of that question coming up quite a bit in the chat, actually. The question about advanced skills once you've initially passed your test, doing Pass Plus or skip pan training, all of the rest. So there's something here about what the research shows and how people feel about it. So what we know from the research is young people are very, very skilled often at the technical skills of driving. They will pick up much better than us as adults. The physical skills of driving. What takes longer to develop is those hazard perception awareness, and also those decisions that you make about the coping strategies. So all the things that we've talked about. Advanced skills might help somebody feel more confident, particularly if they're feeling a bit nervous. If it's motorway driving they want some extra support on, I think that can only be positive because it helps develop that skill set. What we're slightly cautious about is when people go on advanced training and then believe that they're very confident and can cope with anything, because then that can lead to increased risk taking as a result. Skip pan training is a brilliant example. There was a study done in Scandinavia that essentially put two different groups through, one through skip pan training, the other through a session of basically encouraging people to recognise that your skill sets and your ability to cope varies day to day. We can be tired some days, we can be not feeling ourselves, we can be brilliant other days. And then they tested the two groups the week afterwards, and the groups were no different in their ability to manage a skid the week afterwards versus those that had learned the skill and those that hadn't. But the problem was that those that learnt the skill probably went out on the road feeling that they were able to cope with the skid and might have been taking more risk as a result of that. So as I say, it depends on what your reason is for having that extra skills training. If you're not feeling confident and want that extra skill base, I think it's an excellent thing to do. We just have to be a bit worried about overconfidence and supporting young people with the skills that we know they need to develop in terms of managing the risks they're likely to face.
That's great. Thank you, Liz. Does anyone else have anything to say on that question? Is the Advanced Institute of Motoring course worth sending new drivers on? If you don't, that's fine.
I can come in. I would say they need to gain a little bit of experience first, and I think the the course requires them to have a little bit of experience first anyway. We are down here looking at putting together a little intermediate course that kind of gives them a little bit of a bridge gap between passing their test and the Pass Plus and then the advanced, because there is quite a big difference and quite a big gap between those. But obviously they just need to gain that little bit of experience before I think they'll be taken onto the advanced course anyway.
Right. That's great. Well, thank you for everyone that has answered a question. That almost brings us to the end of tonight's webinar. Oh my goodness, that hour has gone so fast. From learner to license. So before you head off and we officially close, there is time for one more poll, one final poll. We love a poll here. So we want to hear what you're planning to do now / next. So the question is for our poll, what are you most likely to do because of attending this webinar? Is it have a conversation with my younger driver about safe driving, offer more guidance and support during the early driving months, look for additional resources or training opportunities, share what I've learned with other parents, I don't plan to take action at this time, or something else? So what are you most likely to do because of attending this webinar? I see Louise said all of them. I hope not the last one. I don't plan to take any action at this time. So our poll is in the chat. So if you'd like to respond, that would be great. If our guest speakers would like to say anything before we close, drop a few more golden diamonds and gems. Now is the time. Don't be shy. I can see we've got a lot of movement in the comments, which is great. Wow, that is it from us then. Thank you to all of our presenters, each and every one of you. You guys have been great with sharing so much knowledge and helping us look to the future and to start change. And thank you to you guys for joining. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us, your Wednesday evening. It's a great way to spend it, learning. And a final reminder to fill out our survey, which will be reposted in the chat. So we would be very grateful and appreciative if you do fill that out. Thank you all, and I hope you have a lovely evening.